Welcome one and all. It's time for a spice-tacular tournament report. Age of Sigmar 4th edition is in full swing, and this is Bootcamp 4. Sold out event from this weekend at the TSN Arena. 24 players battling it out, and my Stormcast Eternals are taking to the field, see who they can crush, and we're going to find out what the difficult matchups are, because it's still early. People are still learning about all the other factions and how to prepare their lists to deal with them. And I was warned beforehand, mostly about Nighthaunt, actually, so we'll see if I get to face them and whether I can deal with their particular set of problems. So, let's dive in. 2,000 points, and this is a shot from Game 1 as we welcome the giant orange arrow onto the screen. So, you can see that we've got Krondys in the list. Krondys, son of Dracothian, the mighty 2-cast wizard with +2 to spellcast. Very nice indeed. And who is joining Krondys in this list? Well, in his regiment we have 4 units, and then we have 2 separate heroes. So, in Krondys' regiment we have 4 concussors, who are currently the best value to be resurrected after they die. 2 concussors coming back to life, 250 points. You can't get better value than that in the Stormcast Eternals list. We've got 3 Praetors who are hanging out with Krondys in this shot, as they will do, following him around, possibly costing me valuable command points keeping up with him with auto-running. Potentially that's a thing that can happen. So we've also got 3 Prosecutors who are currently in this picture. They're in the Celestial Realm waiting to drop down. And joining them there you can see the Purple Sun. I've taken the Morbid Conjuration Endless Spell options, although that's the only one that I've got painted, so that's the only one I'll be using. And what else have we got? We have got 6 Long Strikes. So they're another option that could potentially be brought back. If I need a ranged unit to come back to life, I can bring back 3 of those. And then we have got the Knight Incantor, who you can see hanging out down here, who is pretty tasty, and in the practice game I was using the Lord Veritant instead. And I thought, I'm enjoying this debuffing with the Stormcast spells, so why not get another wizard so I can cast even more of them, because Stormcast do have some pretty tasty debuffs, spells that can potentially reduce hit rolls, wound rolls, rend, saves, and just seems like could be a good idea, especially if I'm going to be throwing out the Purple Sun as well. I want to be maximising how many spells I can do, so she's good, and also pretty handy. Everyone's going to be trying to cast endless spells all over the place, and if she's within 30, then you -1 on your endless spells and manifestations, so that's pretty good. And finally, the most controversial selection in the list is the Knight Venator. So why is that controversial? Partly because no one uses it, and I'm assuming a lot of people just never even built one, because the Knight of Zeros was usually better, even though he wasn't always fashionable either. But the Knight Venator has one thing that is sadly lacking in Stormcast at the moment, which is mortal damage at range. So instead of doing his normal shooting attack once per battle, and that is once per battle across the whole army as well, so you can't just take 10 of them, then you pick a visible enemy unit within 24 inches and it just does mortal wounds. I'm going to keep calling them mortal wounds, but it's technically mortal damage now. So d6 mortal damage, or if it's a monster, d6 +3. So there's going to be a lot of monsters around, and hero monsters at that. So that's really good, being able to just do a big pile of mortal wounds to them, and then long strikes get extra rend against heroes, so they're good at taking out hero monsters as well, because hero monsters won't be able to hide amongst the rabble. So I think if we come up against any big monsters, should be pretty good. And Krondys has some extra rend against infantry, and other than that, what bonuses do we have? We've got some mortal wounds in combat with the concussors, got some extra damage on the charge with the 3 prosecutors. And my general strategy, it depends entirely on the battle plan. With Age of Sigmar, it's all about taking objectives, not just killing things. So I'll describe my plan going into each game based on the opposition. So here we go. With the first game, the Jaws of Gallet. So, there is your terrain setup. And the way this one works is that the objectives slowly disappear over the course of the game if the underdog wishes. So whoever's behind going into each round can delete one of the objectives at the end of their turn, which is quite interesting. So if you're in the lead, you'll find yourself pulled back by easy objectives that you're holding just being swept away from under you. And I'm up against the mighty Gloomspite Git, and it's in mostly trolls. And I'm going to get the names of them wrong, but I am going to pull up the tournament it's on the Millarkey, which is the new thing that people use now to run tournaments. And all the lists will be on there. So I'm going to crack that open right now so I can get the names of them right at least once. Because it's quite confusing. You've got like Rockgut Troggoths, Dankhold Troggoths, Dankguts, Rockguts. It's a lot. So let me crack this open here. And it's retained all the information. That's good. So let's pull up the Gits list. So it's the Trogherd subfaction, if you couldn't guess by the fact that there's trolls everywhere. It is 3 drops, same as me. It is the spell Law of the Clammy Dank, manifestation law Krondspine, so we could be seeing Krondspine versus Krondys at some point. In the General's Regiment, there's Trug, the Troggoth King, and I'm going to assume that that is Trug right there, because it looks more beefy than the others. In that regiment, there is a reinforced regiment of Rockgut Troggoths, which is surrounding him right there, the quite pale ones. There are 2 Dankhold Troggoths, which are, I think it's this one, and this one. I think that's right. And then there is another regiment, which has Dankhold Trog Boss, who is... Okay, I'm definitely going to get lost here. How do we tell the difference between a Dankhold Troggoth and a Dankhold Trog Boss? Someone let me know. Okay, I'm going to guess these mushroom ones, these got to be the bosses, haven't they? So the pink ones will be the bosses, surely. The smell, well, I can't smell the images now, and I can't really conjure up the scent in my memory, unfortunately, as we have the honest wargamer in here. So I better get all my rules descriptions correct. Obviously, one of the leading Age of Sigmar experts, if you will, in the chat right there. So, I'm going to guess that these pink ones are the bosses, and that one there looks like a bit of a beefier one, doesn't he? So that's probably a Dankhold Troggoth, and there are a couple of those in there, and... Oh no, I'm totally lost, because what's this thing? That's got to be a regular troll. That's got to be a boss, then. And then the others are just Dankhold Troggoths. They could make it easier for us, couldn't they? There's Web Spinner Shaman, who is loon-touched, and he's around here somewhere. We'll find him when he moves out. I think he's hiding around the back so he doesn't get shot immediately. Gemmel says one is more dank. Yes, but I can't detect a level of dank particularly from these. They're all equally dank, in my opinion. Two units of Spider Riders. So we've got one here, and the other one... Actually, they're on the other corner, aren't they? Because it's a weird deployment shape. So let's go back. You can see the spiders over here. There's another unit of 5, because it's that kind of L-shaped deployment. So there's 5 of the spiders. And back, we've got the Loon Shrine there, of course, which I'm going to try to destroy to prevent the Trogs from coming back to life. And I think I'm just going to leave this open here the whole time, this list, because I'm going to forget the names of them. So, in the first round, my opponent chooses to go first after ending up with the choice. We both had 3 drops, so it was dependent on the roll-off. And you can see the Krondspine has immediately been plopped out in front of the Loon Shrine. So with this setup, it's an impenetrable wall of trolls, and if I kill them, they can come back to life at half strength, but each unit can do that. So each of these 2 units of 6 can potentially pop back up again. So my plan in this game is to obviously score points on the objectives, but I'm going to try and target things that can't come back to life until the Loon Shrine is destroyed. So I'm going to target the Trog boss, Trug, and what's the other one? All the heroes and the monster trolls, not just the little piddly trolls. That's the gist of it. The spiders, I'm not too bothered about them. I may end up trying to kill them. They could come back to life, but they're not that much of an issue compared to the trolls. The trolls are obviously a nightmare, but my army does mass damage. Concussors and Krondys put out a lot of pain. Long strikes put out a lot of pain in both turns, hopefully. So there's not that much of an advance, really, for the trogs. They're moving in a nice compact blob, but anytime I see a little space behind there, I'm thinking, what could I drop in at the back there? You can see that immediately the long strikes, counter-shooting in the enemy turn, take out 4 spider riders, but unfortunately that's not enough to deny the battle tactic, which was, I believe, the flank one. So I needed to kill all of them to deny that, and there's still 1 left, obviously. So, 6 points. So holding this objective, and my opponent did actually tell me afterwards that the plan was to be the underdog in round 2, so maybe that is the reason for not advancing onto more of the objectives. So just scoring the 6, 4 for the battle tactic, and 2 for holding 1 objective. So my plan is not relating to being the underdog at all. I don't care about that. I just want to smash troll faces, starting with the things that aren't the regular trogs. So if I was the Gloomspike Gits here, and I could read my mind as the Stormcast player, I would put the 6 trogs out in front, both units of them. So if I'm going to kill anything, it would be them, because they can come back. The other stuff can't. And if you see, there is actually a trog boss right there, who is smelling quite killable at the moment, and has this big bit of terrain here that's going to block lots of the trolls getting in there to help. So I'm kind of targeting this guy, and this guy's kind of out on his own as well, a little bit. So onto my turn. I go for take the flanks, which is the same thing. If you set up correctly on this battle plan, it's quite easy. And I've put the Knight Venator out there to take that flank, and there's some kind of buff has been applied to Trog. I think that's Trug. Trog or Trug? Let me have a look. Surely it's Trug, there we go. Trug, Trog, what's the difference? So you can see one of these trolls has already been gunned down by the mighty Stormcast. And what's going on here? Well, a lot of madness in this corner. So Krondys and the Praetors went all the way up there. Let me go back and show you precisely what they did. So the spiders are there. They advanced onto the objective. The Praetors are dangling this way because they need to be within 6 of this edge up in this corner to score the battle tactic. So they didn't want to charge out of that. So they stayed on that side. Krondys went onto this side. The goal being to kill this troll. And you can see that he does take damage and then manages to pile in to compete on the objective with Krondys. And the Praetors and Krondys make mincemeat of not only the spiders, but also the Trog boss. Rambo Squirrel, only problem with Stormcast games these days is they tend to drag on. There are typically dragons in Stormcast lists, yes. Although not always. So, completely cleared out this flank, and anything that comes through this tiny gap, how much stuff can you really fit through there? Are you going to fit enough stuff to worry Krondys with his 5-up ward buddies right there? I guess not. Oh, by the way, the season rules for this season, which is you pick your general's regiment, one of the units in there, and give them a special ability for the game. One of the options that I have at my disposal is to make these guys bodyguards, which they technically already are, which would mean that when they're within 6 inches of their hero that they're guarding, then the enemy are -1 attack against him. So depending on the opposition, I may choose that at some point. In this one, I decided to make the long strikes +1 to hit and wound against the enemy general's regiment, which is going to be Trug and some of the trolls. So, completely cleared out this area, very happy with that, and we've still got this compact blob, but they are threatened from all sides. The long strikes have dropped down there, they did some shooting, The concussors are with the purple sun on this side and Krondys over there. So we've got them surrounded, basically. And if they don't move and just sit on that one objective all game, they are going to lose. So they'll have to come out at least a little bit. Although being the underdog, they will be able to start deleting objectives. So I scored 10 for that round. Very nice. And then I choose to give my opponent the next turn, as denoted by this finger pointing over there, because I wanted to actually score a battle tactic, so I didn't want to take the double here. And if you look at this setup, going next, what does it really do for me? I don't know whether I'm going to be able to get into the meat of the matter, the stuff right in the centre, the particularly juicy stuff. And it's not a guarantee. I'm running into a really vast wall of meat there. There's still a Kron spine, and I'd have to be engaging everything at once. If I make them go next, they may spread out a little bit and give me more room to snipe in there. And I'm still going to be able to shoot on their turn with the long strikes, and they're too far away to make guaranteed charges into all my units as well. So giving them the turn seemed like less of a risk, just so I can get my own tactic later. So, my opponent, what's this? There's a picture of the concussors. I'm going to assume there's some kind of tactic chosen that involves them. So I used a counter spell in this turn and cast Starfall onto these trolls and put -1 charge dice on them, which is a ridiculously powerful ability in this game. And there's quite a lot of it around. It depends which armies you face. Stormcast have it in a spell. The Deepkin have it on their sharks with their shooting attack, so they can take multiple instances of it, which is quite powerful. But it's a very potent ability, because not only are you shutting down charges in their own turn, but it makes them very difficult to countercharge with as well if they're on -1 charge dice. So casting it in the enemy turn, you have a lesser window of effectiveness for it, because it's going to expire as soon as my next turn starts. But making that unit basically unable to charge seems like a no-brainer to me. And my opponent may have actually chosen, could have been take the centre on this one, because you can see there's a couple of units there hanging out the centre. And had I not put -1 charge dice on those trolls, maybe it would have been different units doing this job, but you can see they are spreading out a little bit. So there's the wizard, I think. Is that the wizard? I'm trying to spot, that looks like a base there, doesn't it? Does that look like a goblin wizard right there? So, long strikes in the enemy turn, do some shooting, do some wounds, and not very eventful turn. 3 spiders come back to life, blocking off Krondys from getting round the back, which is a good move, and also prevents me from dropping any units down over there. And there we go, going into my turn. And my opponent did score for 1 objective and 2 objectives and a battle tactic there, so a decent round of scoring. I go for Do Not Waver. 2 units that fight, and none of my units are destroyed in this turn. So, the Night Venator heads out to the corner and just starts blasting. And I think I used my once per game shot into this Trog boss. The prosecutors come down in the corner, where a space has been left for them. If you leave a 9-inch gap, they can land in there, they don't take up much space. And the concussors and the purple sun are going for the Troggoths. You'll notice the purple sun is not in combat. That's because it rolled a double 1. So up to this point, every time I've tried to use a purple sun in my entire life in this edition, it's rolled a double 1 on the charge. So you can see that this unit have, hold on, if we go back, you'll see this guy is not there. That's because, hold on, maybe the purple sun did get in this time. Yeah, it could have been on a different occasion I got the double 1. So he's dead. Trug is dead. The general's gone. He was on the front lines. You pay the price for that. You can see I put Finest Hour on the concussors this turn, knowing they're about to get into combat. And Krondys just eats the spiders up there, which is a pretty safe bet he was going to do that. The prosecutors, when they drop down, they decided that they're not actually going to charge anyone, because they didn't roll high enough to reach the shaman. And the shaman is hanging out somewhere in the middle here. I think he redeployed into between all these trolls, and I didn't roll high enough to get to him, so I would have only been able to fight the Trog boss. And I couldn't afford to activate them first, because Trug would have killed the concussors. So the prosecutors decided they're not going to go in this turn, they're just going to hold off, sit there and bide their time. And I've also got units strategically spaced out in each table quarter now, so that for battle tactics that require that, such as reclaim the realms, I've got units all over the place that can just hop into the right zone to score. So another big 10-point round for me, and I get the next turn. So I decide at this point that because of the layout, I am going to take the double, because if I don't, the concussors might die. They'll probably get hit by maybe the Kron Spine and these Trogs there, and these two can go and hit something. They could probably clear out maybe the Prosecutors as well, and I don't want to lose the concussors now. They could avoid Krondys. If I go next, I think I can kill a significant amount of this. So I'm taking the turn, no battle tactic, but I've got a bit of a lead, so that's what we're going for. So, here we go, doing more shooting to the Trog boss. Prosecutors getting ready to charge, moving in. Krondys getting ready to charge. The Prosecutors go in, and they kill the wizard that was hiding amongst the trolls. So that was worth going in there for. Krondys is just going to beat up the Loon Shrine, because I don't want anything to come back, and I'm on the verge of killing off the big troll units now. So I just want to destroy that before they die. So Krondys is just doing that job. Oh, we've got Matt in the chat, my poor web spinner. Yes, you're going to be enjoying how confused I am by the names of all these units, and which ones are Trog bosses, and which ones are Rock Guts, and which ones are Dankhold bosses, which ones are Dankhold Troggoths. It's a lot of Dank, a lot of Trog, a lot of Trug, and I've lost track of what's what. So the concussors against these guys, still raging on. And you can see the Prosecutors are getting swamped now, after they went in and killed the wizard, so they did their job, and they're allowed to die now. They'll just go back up to the Celestial Realm and be reforged, and they'll get a little service medal on their shoulder, I think, for that job. Got rid of the wizard, so we're not going to have any more Kron Spine to deal with. And you can see there's been -1 to wound on these trolls. It previously said something else there when I double debuffed them. I think I've got -1 to hit and wound on them at one point, but at this point it's just -1 to wound. So big powerful units like 6 trolls are really good targets for the massive debuffs you can throw out with Stormcast. Although, after facing other factions later, I find out that they can kind of do the same thing, sometimes without spells at all, sometimes just by just looking at you, and sometimes they have spells that do both effects at once, rather than Stormcast having to do 2 different spells to get all those effects. I scored the maximum for the round because I didn't take a battle tactic, since I chose the double, and I think it's worked out okay. I haven't quite destroyed the Loon Shrine, but it's almost dead, and I've whittled down the trolls, and I've got rid of the Trog in here that may have been a Trog boss. I'm going to guess that one was a Trog boss there, the one I just killed, the pale looking one. Yes, it was. So the Dankhold... Hold on, let's get this right. The Dankhold Troggoth is the bigger one, which is the pinky one, and then the white one was the Trog boss. And Trug was the one that died right at the start. Okay. So, into turn 3 for the trolls. And Do Not Waver is selected, so a couple of units fight. No units are destroyed, which is obviously risky when you're in combat with all these powerful Stormcast units. But we're going to get massive amounts of trolls slamming into the concussors now, but the Purple Sun is there as backup, which is good, but they all get in, obviously. One of them is heavily debuffed still, though. And the concussors are getting slapped around, but there's still one alive. And the Loon Shrine is almost dead. And the concussors are still alive, but that is going to be a maximum points round, because you can see my opponent, due to being the underdog, has been removing the objectives as well. So 2 objectives gone now. So, on to the next round, and now this one's gone as well, so there's only 2 objectives left going into round 4. And did I even mark down who's going next in this round? Well, it looks like it's me, because Krondys is steaming into combat, murdering things left and right, but the concussors are dying as well. The long strikes have teleported over here, so they can join in now, shooting up the trolls who are surrounding the Purple Sun. And I've got rid of the Loon Shrine, so that's good. None of these trolls are coming back now, because both the units are technically still alive, so the objective of killing all the stuff that can't be brought back to life first is working. But the score's actually fairly close. And because I don't chew through all these trolls in this turn, I'm not actually holding objectives now. But I do score with Take Their Land, because I think I just chose this piece of terrain here and just put the long strikes on it. And the Praetors are still there as well, giving Krondys his ward save. But I didn't score objectives, because these are the only ones left. So the underdog bonus is helping out the Trogs here significantly. You can see a -1 save spell put on them as well. And I also Finest Hour and All Out Attacks on Krondys this turn. So, on to turn 4 for the Trogs. And they also go for Take Their Land, and the Spiders just run onto this piece of terrain. And they're just about worth more than the Knight Incantor. But you can see the Trolls are getting heavily whittled down now, and Krondys makes mincemeat. He's down to 11 wounds, which is the worst place to put him because it means he's 1 wound away from losing some of his most powerful attacks. So you really need to get him down to 10 to halve the number of his best attacks. And he just chomps them to death. Especially with the Purple Sun there giving them even less of a save, so I don't think they actually get a save against his attacks with the Sun there. And of course being able to shut down commands as well. So we've got 1 Dankhold Troggoth and 1 regular Troggoth right there next to the Purple Sun. So again though, big scores for the Trogs because they're holding the objective still. Because Krondys only killed them. I suppose what I could do, I think I've run out of command points actually, but if I had command points left over, Krondys could have maybe done a power through to get onto the objective and then done mortal wounds to the enemy as well, but I don't think I had any command points left. Matt says, I thought I was being clever doing that. Deleting objectives, is that what you're talking about? Because that's definitely working in your favour. On to turn 5, and so if you look at this, I haven't scored that many over the last couple of rounds, so the Trogs have been catching up because of that underdog bonus of deleting objectives, and now it's very, very close. So, into round 5, and the Trogs delete another objective, and this is the only one now. So what I have to do is, in my turn 5, I have to take this objective and kill this fella to take it off him. So the Concussors come back to life, 2 of them, and they make a 9-inch charge into the Dankhold Troggoth, and there we go, they kill him in turn 5, and that was how it turns into a win. So 8 points. We were staring at probably a draw if I, let's see which battle tactic did I choose. Reclaim the Realms. So yeah, that was going to be an easy one because the Praetors are in that bit. Got the Incantor down here. I've also got the Long Strikes there. I've got the Knight Venator there, and I've got Krondys in this one. So I couldn't accidentally send everything into combat and mess up the battle tactic, because I had 1 unit in each section on its own, even if this fight hadn't gone my way. So I needed those guys to make that 9-inch charge, and they did, and they took the objective. So that's just enough to edge it into being a win. So the final score, actually, which I can look at on here, on Millarkey. Let me see. So it was 38-34 to the Stormcast. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned at the start, but I'm using the Vanguard Wing so that the Long Strikes can teleport on a 3-up each turn. So, good game, ended up very close, and it shows you the value of the underdog mechanic, actually. And maybe the value of intentionally being the early underdog, as my opponent claims was the case. So, you can start deleting the objectives. Obviously, if you turn your opponent into the underdog midway through the game, then it can turn the other way again, and they can delete your secure objectives. But ended up being very close, and it's the standard Stormcast, really. You can score big, but you can't stop the enemy scoring quite often. That's how I found it in the last edition, so we'll see if that trend continues into this one. On to the next round. Round 2, and I'm pulling up the list here. So, close to the chest. So on this one, you have 3 Okay, actually, this is a little bit confusing, this one, and we did actually find out towards the end of the game that I believe you can choose one of 4 objectives as the primary, not one of 3. I feel like it used to be 3. Maybe in the previous edition it was. But I think the way it's worded, you can actually pick 4. Because it says, let's see, the player that is not the active player must pick one objective in their territory to be the primary objective until the start of their turn. So this one here is touching your territory. So that classes as in it, doesn't it? Because it doesn't say not also in enemy territory. So I think you can pick one of 4 based on that. So we weren't doing that at the start, we were just picking 3, these ones here. Because if that one's valid, then that one is as well. But I feel like in the last edition, you only had the choice of the 3 objectives. Someone tell me if I'm wrong with that. But I feel like you have the choice of 4. So, I'm up against the Disciples of Tzeentch. And my army does magic quite well. Tzeentch does it a bit better than I do. So there is Kairos Fateweaver in there, who's 440 points, so he's less points than Krondys. I imagine significantly less fighty than Krondys, and less survivable. But he does have some nice spells. And what's he got in his General's Regiment? He's got 6 Zangor Skyfires, 3 Zangor Skyfires as well, and so there's all the Skyfires with Kairos, and 10 Kyric Acolytes, who are, let me see, out on this side, I think. So you can see lots of screening going on to prevent me from dropping in anything that could attack Kairos, because he's quite fragile. So if I was able to drop down long strikes near him, they would potentially turn him into a pincushion pretty fast. So there is also a Zangor Shaman, who is in amongst this lot somewhere. He might actually be in there. I think it's that's him there, on a disc. 20 Zangors, and 3 Skyfires. So there's the other 3. And Morbid Conjuration Lore. And it's 2 drops, so this Tzeentch player is going to be able to decide who goes first in the game. And off the table, I've got Long Strikes, Prosecutors, and the Night Venator, because I don't want them to get killed by magic or any really fast Tzeentch things that are using all kinds of trickery. I want to keep them off the table until a juicy target presents itself, and then they'll drop in and hopefully do the work. You can see 2 purple suns next to each other there. The enemy purple sun looking a bit more depressed, not quite as bright-eyed. And my setup, got the Concussors starting on an objective, I've got the Knight Incantor starting on an objective, I've got the Praetors as far forward as they can be, and Krondys a little bit further back. So I was informed before the game of the various Tzeentchian abilities that exist, so certain units are going to be able to go very fast, engage at quite long range, and that's a scary thing. So we'll see who gets to go first. It's going to be down to my opponent, and I am given the first turn. So I go for Seize the Centre, because I don't mind if the Concussors get into a fight, they don't need to charge to be good at fighting. And I also put the Night Venator in there as well. I just decided that was the unit to use, there's no grand strategy behind that reasoning. You can see that my opponent has done a counter spell with an endless spell right there, which is, I can't remember what this one's called actually, but it explodes anyway. When it reaches 6, it has a massive explosion, and you can choose when to trigger it to go off. But I've got the purple sun in there, so they're limited on what can get through. So Seize the Centre is always a risky one when you're running an elite army, because you are putting stuff in the middle that is valuable. So that's a lot of points right there in the centre. But with the purple sun nearby, limited on who can get through. So I score 8 points because I was holding the objectives that I started on, and I moved on to this one with the Praetors. I do not bring the Long Strikes in yet, or the Prosecutors, I'm waiting for something juicier for them. On to Tzeentch, turn 1. Do not waver is selected, so 2 units fight and none were destroyed. So initially I thought, that might be risky if they're thinking of charging, but a unit of 20 Zangors is quite survivable. So you can see that some shackles have been placed down here, which I thought was interesting because it's actually meaning that less Zangor could funnel their way through there, potentially. But you can see some wounds were immediately done to the concussors. The Zangor sliding their way in, having to stay away from the purple sun, obviously. Can't get that close. And from shooting, which is from the Skyfires here, one of the concussors is down. And another one is down. More shooting. And here come the charges. So that's opened up a nice space. So the first unit is able to charge all the way down here and tow on the objective. And, oh yeah, the fate dice were used to make that charge. So the way Tzeentch work now, they have a big pile of dice, roll them, and whatever they land on, you put them to one side, and then throughout the game, if you decide you want that particular number, you can just use it for certain specific things, including charge distances and spells, I think. So someone let me know what else you can use it for, because I can't remember the exact list, but there's some things that you definitely can't use it for. So, all the Zangor in combat, and surrounding the concussors and the Night Venator and the Purple Sun, and all the concussors die immediately to the Zangor, which is sad, considering the concussor unit is not far off the cost of these 2 full units of Zangor. The Zangor absolutely annihilated them, although to be fair, they had been softened up with shooting, even with all that defense. So these are the games, the types of units, these Zangor, is when you're running an elite army and you come up against something and you think, yeah, they just look like your average cannon fodder troops, they're not going to be too difficult. And then they have a literal bucket full of dice to throw at you, and suddenly they're somehow on 2s and 2s, or 3s and 2s, or 2s and 3s, because of some combo of different abilities and auras and such that they've got going on, and different buffs. And then somehow they're all like Rend 2 or Rend 3 or Rend 8. And you think, wait a minute, this is just a cruddy little unit. How did this happen? And really, you have to have played against an army multiple times before you know what's really good. You can't just look at the War Scroll. You have to also look at all the other War Scrolls to see what synergizes with it before you can make a decision on whether you should be scared of it or not. So, into my turn 2, and I go for take their land. I'm just going to take this little patch of land here. So Krondys is trying to get into combat now, and he annihilates a unit of Zangor. So that was good, and I brought back the concussors as well, and they charged into the other unit of Zangor to stop them piling in this way mostly. And then I was shooting them up as well, these units. So we've totally got rid of one unit. Krondys does a good job there, and I've still got the Praetors within range of him as well, so he's still got his ward save. You can see I put -1 to hit with a spell onto the unit of Zangor there that I obliterated. And chewing through them quite nicely. The concussors are not having a very good performance though. That unit's still way too alive for my liking. So I do score 8 again, so steady scoring, but all the scary stuff I haven't been able to get to yet, and I've had to bring in the long strikes outside of my initial game plan. I wanted to just target something like Kairos, but I've not been given the opportunity to do that because he's so well bunkered in. So I've had to actually use them to support in the fight against these obscenely powerful Zangor, who are 300 points for a unit of 20, and they're definitely doing a good job on the concussors, who are 500 points, and then the unit that came back is worth 250. So into turn 2 for Tzeentch, and take their lands is selected in retaliation. Oh yeah, we've been marking the primary objectives as well, so I'm obviously picking the one that's furthest from where the enemy models are. And Krondys has got a debuff on him, I can't remember what that symbol means now, but it's something horrible. And we've got a Gravetide around Krondys as well. And this thing's probably going to blow and do some mortal wounds, which isn't very friendly. Discs. The Screamers. They're not the Skyfires, not the Screamers. Let's see. Reformed Bugman says Krondys is such a boss. Krondys is very good. And it's a shame Krondys and the Stardrake are both very good at the same time, because I want to run both, but the list would get very, very elite at that point. Someone give me ideas for a list with Krondys and the Stardrake at once, because I love Krondys for the spells, and he's good at fighting as well, but the double magic is very potent, especially at the moment with the way endless spells are. All the debuff spells are really good, and the Stardrake, good at fighting as well, and can just eat things, doesn't care about what saves you have. If you've got 4, 5 or even 6 wounds, there's a chance it'll just eat you regardless. And if you've got 1, 2 or 3 wounds, you're definitely getting some of you eaten. But even if you're like a 6-wound hero, Stardrake charges you, there's a really good chance he's just going to eat you before any combat happens. So Stardrake I like as well, so I would like to try both of them in a list at some point. Okay, let's keep going then. So, you can see all-out defense on Krondys, but he's down to 11 after all the shooting that's piled on him. And they're closing in, down to 10. The Gravetide charges into him, and so does this exploding spell whose name I've forgotten. And the Concussor is taking damage as well. Down to 5 wounds on Krondys, he's hanging in there. You dead Zangor. Concussor is now dead. So the Zangor are doing a really good job, and they are a very powerful unit. So Krondys wounds the endless spells. And he's down to 3 wounds as more damage is chipped away. I think that was the explosion that caused those last couple of wounds. But I don't think I've been making too many of his ward saves, which is on a 5, so you don't expect to make a huge amount of them. On to the next turn for Tzeentch, and take their land is successfully done. And I think it was probably this one here. Yeah, I think I took a couple of pictures out of sequence there, because we're about to dive straight into turn 3 for me. So I go for Slay the Tyrants, kill an enemy hero, because I wanted to kill this guy because he was heavily wounded, but I think he rallies some wounds back. And then I charge in, want to kill him. I send the Purple Sun in there as well, I'm shooting him, but he survives. Wow, 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 I even finest out Krondys as well. I think that was my attempt to... Was that my attempt to wound him, possibly? Yeah, so it was quite bad round of attacks for me, and the little hero survives, so I failed the battle tactic. Which is very sad, because I could have been hitting these guys instead, but I've been focusing my attention on the hero for the tactic, and nothing worked, sadly. Just a really bad round for Krondys. It's going to happen sometimes. The Prosecutors go into the unit of Skyfires there, and, well, that's a lot of 1s and 2s. So they equally underperformed in their duties. So you can tell it's bad when I'm taking pictures of the dice rolls. Krondys down to 1 wound, he's still hanging in there. You'll notice that the Knight Venator is just stuck in the middle of the table. He was surrounded by Zangor for the entire game, and none of them ever attacked him, so they obviously don't look at him as a threat. Prosecutors continuing to do battle with the Skyfires there, and I only scored 2 points. Failed battle tactic, because that hero is still alive. I think it was on 1 wound, possibly. But Krondys just didn't do very well that round, and then he's immediately killed at the start of the next round. So that's unfortunate. But he was nearly dead anyway, and he's hung on pretty well so far. And into the Tzeentch turn, attack on 2 fronts, take 2 objectives, one of which was controlled by your opponent. So that's going to be pretty straightforward. There's a lot of Tzeentch stuff left. I'm running out of units to do the killing with now. And the Praetors having to fight on their own, which was never part of their job description. Prosecutors are slowly getting whittled down as well over there by the Kyric Acolytes who've joined in, of all things. And it's not going well for the Stormcast at all. Praetors are hanging on though, they're doing alright. And at this stage, you're thinking, well, Kairos is still alive, there's loads of Tzeentch, powerful stuff still there, but I've still got long strikes who can teleport, so I can still theoretically take objectives at this point. And I can do something. I can just score as much as possible, even if it's not looking good. The Tzeentch are just steadily scoring each turn though, and that's something I'm not able to do right now, so I'm a full turn of scoring behind going into the next round. And into my turn 4, slay the entourage, so kill an enemy unit in the general's regiment. And I think it was the... who did I pick? Could have been the Kyric Acolytes that I killed. Tabletop Laboratory says, have you tried the Stormcast spell lore yet? Of course, Morbid is best, but with Arcanum on the dais, -1. From the meatball, maybe some play. I haven't really eyed it up too much yet, because I don't have the Stormcast Endless spells. So I haven't really paid too much attention to it. I've got to paint the normal endless spells first, but I will definitely check them out at some point, and they'll certainly be added, because I'm going to keep playing lots of Stormcast games over the years, so it's definitely something that I will get eventually. But no, I haven't given them much thought yet. So I need to try and steal this objective off the opposition. So you can see the long strikes teleport over there and attempt to charge in, along with the Knight Venator, who aren't supposed to be in combat, but desperate times. But unfortunately they can't do it. The Praetors are still holding on alright though against these Skyfires. And yeah, so that was kind of my last hope of accomplishing anything in the game. And I think it was probably trying to kill this unit. I think they may have been in the entourage, so maybe trying to finish them off. No, actually, I think, yeah, I did kill I think the Acolytes were in the entourage, weren't they? So I think I killed them this turn. But couldn't take the objective though. But I do score some points in that round, so that's okay. Still not looking healthy though. Definitely going to lose the game. Tzeentch go for take their land, which is going to be easy because there's lots of units that can zap around and I don't have much left to cover the space with. So they get onto my primary objective now as well, because, let me go to the last wide shot. I selected this one as the primary, thinking it was the furthest from the enemy, but I should have actually used this one, because I don't think any of these units could have automatically taken it. So if they move out of combat to take it, they've only got one wound left on this guy, so he'd probably die, and then one of them isn't enough to take it off the Knight Incanter. I don't think these guys could move out of combat and actually make it far enough to get there. So it's the fact that there was extra movement, auto-running, something from up there was able to get down onto this primary. So I should have picked this one and denied some points that way. So there's not much going on, but I managed to clear out this side now. So I'm going to keep scoring, but the Gravetide has moved into the long strike, so that's not very nice. One of them's dead. So big round again for Tzeentch, and really just can't stop their endless tide of scoring. So they're going to go first in round 5 and get everything into the Stormcast. But don't necessarily murder things, but score enough, and then I can't score much in my turn 5 either. So I end up with just 1 point in the last round. And my opponent gets 6. So the final score was 40 points to Tzeentch, 23 to the Stormcast Eternals. So where did this game go wrong? Well, underestimating the massive units of Zangor, when I was thinking they were going to be easy meat. And I think it was unnecessary to challenge them in the way that I did. I went for seize the centre as my battle tactic when I should have possibly been more evasive and stayed away so that they couldn't all get in at once, the Zangor. Because you saw once Krondys got into them, he was actually able to do some good work. But I needed to focus in and kill one unit at a time, possibly. It's tricky though. The magic was kind of against me because my opponent kind of out-magics me, with the Kairos just being better at magic and more endless spells at the disposal as well. I haven't got all mine painted yet. Into the next round. And this one is Border War, which is you score 1 victory point for holding your own objective, 2 victory points each for the 2 on the centre line, and if you take the enemy's objective, then you get 5 points. And the twist is that if you're the underdog army, then +1 to hit rolls for units in the army for the underdog that charge this turn and are contesting the objective wholly within the enemy territory. So if you're the underdog and you're going big, going for the enemy's territory, then you get +1 to hit rolls, which is pretty cool. So after struggling against an army that out-magicked me, what do we have this time? Nagash. So let's crack open this list and have a look at what Nagash is bringing to the table. So here we go, it's the Ossiarch Bone Reapers, the Kavalos Lance subfaction. Nagash and a lot of cavalry and fast things. It's very elite. So let's see how many points Nagash is. 880 points, so he better be good. He's got 9 spells, and even if he miscasts, he doesn't have to stop casting, which is very good. So that's scary. Morbid Conjuration, so Purple Sun and the like will be appearing, and maybe multiples of the endless spells. Maybe 2 Purple Suns on the table, because I can be doing one as well. So there's Nagash, there is Immortis Guard, there is Kavalos Death Riders ×2, which are the cavalry. They're quite good. And you would think that these kind of bone cavalry, looking at them, that they would do more damage on the charge, but they're average. However, they actually seem pretty good. They have a lot of attacks, the cavalry. Then there is a reinforced unit of Morghast Harbingers, which would be the unit of 4 here. They're very scary. They're 540 points. That one unit is the same cost as Krondys, which should tell you how powerful they are. And that is that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units in the whole army. Is that correct? It looks like it. So isn't there another hero in here? Let's have a look at this list. Nagash, Immortis Guard, Death Riders, Morghast Harbingers, and the Bone Tithe Nexus. Is there not a hero lurking in here somewhere? Maybe not. Or maybe there is and it's not on the list. Is that a hero? No, that's just a wing. Okay. Here we go. So what's my plan in this game? Let's look at the wide shot again. So, Nagash is obviously supremely powerful, so I would like to be able to kill him, because he can just bring a unit back at full strength at some point in the game. I don't particularly want to face down the toughest unit and kill them twice, so maybe killing Nagash could be the way to go. It's not going to be easy, but I throw everything at him, could potentially do it. You'll notice that if you're familiar with both of these armies, you'll think that I've made a very silly move here by putting the concussors that far forward when the enemy are going to be able to choose to go first, because I don't actually realise at this point that this unit of 4, these horrible Morghast Harbingers, actually have a 3 dice charge and can move up to about there before they even do that. So, had I had that in my mind, I probably would have moved way further back with all my units. And even if I was given the first turn then, I would have still been very cautious going forward, because a 3 dice charge, very difficult to fail. So you can see I've got the Praetors over here with Krondys, concussors on that objective. There is the Bone Tithe Nexus, which I'm avoiding specifically because I think it does stuff to you if you're near it, but not if you're far away from it. So I'm not going to bother trying to destroy it, because as far as I'm aware, it only has minor benefits outside of just hurting the enemy. I believe. Someone let me know if that's incorrect. So, let's see, who's who? That unit at the back there. Yeah, there is definitely more in this list, isn't there? Because there's Nagash. The Immortis Guard are down there. Maybe it is right. It just seems like there's a lot in the army compared to what's written on here. So, in the first turn, Death choose to go first and seize the centre with 2 units of Death Riders. We've got a Purple Sun and a Gravetide already, and a Human Hand on the table. So, I can't particularly hit any of the scary stuff yet. I can hit this rubbish stuff here. Or can I? Because look how far forward these guys are instantly. So, yes, I wasn't really fully aware, and I probably just didn't hear every detail as we were going through our army lists of exactly how fast these guys can be. Because looking at them, if not everything with wings has a 3 dice charge, and these guys look very lumbering and decaying in their wings. They don't even have wing membrane going on. So I wouldn't have thought they had a 3 dice charge. So I'll definitely be aware of that in future. So as it stands, they could potentially make mincemeat of these concussors, who are about equal value to them. So maybe we've got a chance. We'll see. So, all-out defense. Nope, that didn't help at all. The concussors are just annihilated in one go by this massive unit. And at this stage, it feels like it might already be game over based on that. But that's not my attitude. I'm going to keep trying to kill and trying to score. So I go for take their lands. The Knight Incanter is running away from these horrible things, and I've cast -1 to wound and -1 charge dice on them. So they're only on a normal, leisurely 2 dice charge now, and -1 to wound if they do get into combat. Krondys and the Purple Sun are dealing with some of the cavalry. And the Praetors are taking some wounds, sadly. And the long strikes drop down and fire everything into Nagash. The concussors are obviously dead over there. Nagash has taken some damage, but not a huge amount. Because, so, Nagash, when you give him a load of saves to make, apparently, say, okay, Nagash, make 12 saves. And then when the dice rolling's finished, Nagash then announces, okay, I lose 2 wounds. So Nagash is just very good. I think he has a ward save from having some of his chums nearby. And I've also dropped down my Knight Venator, as you can see there, to also shoot Nagash. But to not much effect yet. I think it's this unit here, the Immortis Guard, who give him a ward save from being nearby. So I'm not feeling too confident, but I do score 6 points. Into the next round, and I'm given the next turn. I think I might take it. I might choose to take it, actually, and no battle tactic, because if I didn't take it, let's see, what do you think would have happened here? Krondys would surely have got charged by these guys and killed. Long strikes will get charged and killed by Nagash. And then it's game over, because I'm only left with Krondys if he manages to somehow survive against this lot. Because they could shoot him or spell off the bodyguard first, so I wouldn't even have my ward save. So I think I would just get tabled if I didn't take the turn. So I managed to finish off the cavalry. The long strikes and the prosecutors fling themselves into Nagash, but sadly not enough to kill him. So I shoot him with the Venator, the long strikes, and the prosecutors come down over here somewhere, blast into him, but alas. You can also see that the Knight Incantor charged into the Morghasts. The reason for that is that I didn't want them countercharging Krondys, because otherwise I could be dead. Because they have a 3 dice charge, they could very feasibly make it over there. So the reason she's in there is just to lock them down in combat, which is a valid strategy in this game, but ideally you don't want to be doing it with a wizard. You want some really cheap unit that you can charge into the enemy's most killer unit, so they can't countercharge the thing you want to protect. So it's not looking good for the Stormcast, because Nagash is still alive and I've thrown everything at him. So I am still behind and I've played an extra turn. Onto Nagash again. And you can see, though, that the Knight Incantor actually survived a round against them, which is hilarious. So, endless spells moving in for the kill. Krondys is starting to take some wounds. And Nagash is coming in as well. The long strikes lose 1, and they've got -1 to hit and save. Debuffs on them at the moment as a spell. And the Morghasts move away. Move away from the Knight Incantor. Except she's about to be hit by some cavalry instead, so she's not getting off that easy. Nagash is going after the long strikes. And that's not very good dice. I think that is my covering fire at Nagash. Hitting on 4s. Wow, wow, wow. That's a lot of misses. And the Morghasts are going to possibly kill Krondys now, because I've still got a bodyguard left though, so he does have his ward save right now. But it doesn't help. He's dead. And the Knight Incantor loses a wound. And everybody starts dying left and right. I don't really have much left now, but I do get to go next with the Knight Venator, who toes on an objective just to score, and the Knight Incantor moves out of combat to score. And I get some points. But now it's game over because everyone's going to die. Yep. The Bone Reapers are just going to spread out onto the objectives. There's not much I can do now. There's not much left. Yes, Zato, that is rough. So I haven't actually killed that much. I've put 1,000,000 shots into Nagash, but if you don't kill him, it's not really worth it. So I go for slay the entourage at this point. It's the only thing I might be able to do to kill a unit that's in the general's entourage, but I don't manage that. And my opponent scores 10 points every round. I had a decent round 1 and 3, but other than that, 2 and 0 and 0, because I just run out of units. So everybody's dead. Nagash has a very good time. A human hand is on the table again, and it's been withdrawn, but it's still up there in the corner. So, very tough game. So I'd also like some tips in the comments as well on how you would deal with Nagash when he's well shrouded by friendly troops, so that you can't just get to him when you want. Obviously, starting off further away from these guys would have been a much better idea. Possibly also putting my hard-hitting units right next to each other, so if you come into one, then the other one can countercharge. Could be interesting as well. So, tabletop laboratories. Can you describe the magic matchup between Nagash and Krondys? Did Nagash just keep getting off almost all 9 every turn? Pretty much. So, I would try to stop the first couple of spells, and then Nagash just has free reign to cast another 6 or 7. So, he could pretty much do what he wants, because even when he miscasts, he just keeps going. I think he takes a wound or something instead of having to stop. So he just keeps casting and casting. So all the endless spells appear and get in your way. And then his other spells are nothing to be sniffed at either. Krondys did successfully get spells off. You saw that Did I have a purple sun of my own on there at one point? I must have done. Yeah, there we go. So I did have a purple sun out there. Yeah, there we go. We had a purple sun off at that point in the game. So I was able to cast my own spells, because Krondys with the +2 to cast, that's pretty good. So I was able to do my own spells. I was able to debuff the enemy quite well, and Nagash didn't really stop too many of my spells. But it's just what comes back at you is just much more powerful than the spells that you can put out. And there's loads of them. He just doesn't stop. He just keeps casting and casting and casting. So it's very tricky. You can't bring enough wizards to counter Nagash magically, because you'd be spending so many points and using up probably your entire army on wizards if you want to take enough stuff to try and unbind all of his spells. I just don't think you could do that. So you've got to have another tactic, so I'd be interested to know how people deal with Nagash if he doesn't let you just shoot him immediately. Because obviously you can shoot him to death. It didn't work out for me, the long strikes didn't do very well, but I also wasn't able to bring my entire army onto him to attack. So there you go, maybe bunching up a bit more. Up next, onto the Vice in the next round. So we are into the Khorne forces with 3 Bloodthirsters, if you count Scarbrand as a Bloodthirster there. So, on the Vice, the objectives start off in the outer corners, then in rounds 2 and 3 they occupy these spots here, and in rounds 4 and 5 they move into the centre. So the area you're contesting gets smaller each turn. And the underdog can pick an objective and do mortal damage to units that are on objectives. So let's crack open the list from this game, shall we? Here we go. Blades of Khorne. And it is the Murder Host subfaction. So, 4 drops, so I've got less drops, so I'm going to be able to pick who's going first or second. Prayer Law, Blood Blessings of Khorne. Manifestation Law, Judgments of Khorne. The General is Scarbrand, who is here. And in the General's regiment, there is... Let's see... That's the entire regiment, just Scarbrand, nothing else in it. Regiment 1, Bloodthirster of Insensate Rage, who is the Favoured of Khorne, and Argath, the King of Blades. So is this the one that shuts down ward saves? Which is... I think it's this one on the left. One of them shuts down ward saves. Then there's another Bloodthirster of Insensate Rage. Haven't really seen that word in another context. So there's another one there. And each of them have 1 unit of Fleshhounds, which is 5 Fleshhounds, and one of them also has... Oh no, the Slaughter Priest has Blood Reavers and Garrick's Reavers in his regiment. So the Slaughter Priest is going to be hanging out on the Skull Altar. So as far as Khorne go, there's very little blood and skull in this list. We've got Bloodthirsters, Blood Reavers, Skull Altar, but not much else. Usually have like Blood Rippers, Skull Crushers, Blood Blasters, Skull Blooders, and yeah, usually have a lot more blood and skull in the names. So very considerate of my opponent not to have too many of them, considering I have to describe them all on video. So for my layout, I've gone for the same kind of thing I've been doing so far. When there are objectives on multiple sides that I want to take, just have one big massive scary unit of concussors over here and a big massive scary Krondys over on this side. I've got the long strikes on an objective at the start because that only stays there for 1 turn and they can teleport, so they're unlikely to get stuck there. The Knight Incanter on the other corner because she's not going to accomplish that much in this game. She can't use her 1 auto unbind because the enemy aren't doing any spells. The Fleshhounds are hanging out on objectives, which I like. That is good news for me because if we go back to the wide shot, what I see here is that there are Bloodthirsters who are not surrounded by friendly units, which says to me I can drop down and kill them, and my army is really good at killing hero monsters, and that's what all 3 of them are. Now, if the Blood Tithe for the Khorne reaches 8, they can bring a fresh Bloodthirster into the game. So, I'm going to keep an eye on the Blood Tithe, because each time you kill a unit, the Blood Tithe goes up. Each time, if you've got someone on the Skull Altar, I think it's whenever a spell is ignored by one of the units you're casting it on, which I believe is on a 5-up, then the Blood Tithe goes up. So I'm not going to be casting too many spells at the enemy, because I want to keep the Blood Tithe down, which is going to be marked in this tower as the game goes on. I don't want it to reach 8 too quickly. I want a chance to actually wipe out the Bloodthirsters before another one's going to come back to life. So ideally, I don't want to be killing Fleshhounds. So if they stay away for a while, that would be great, because if they die, all it does is just add to the tithe. So it's going to be interesting, but my army is very good at killing hero monsters. I can do mortal damage in combat with the Concussors, which is very good. Long strikes, and the Knight Venator, very good at shooting hero monsters. And Krondys is obviously a big rend machine as well, so he can potentially do a good job. And outside of those 3, there's not really much threat. The other units aren't particularly dangerous. So if I just focus on a Bloodthirster at a time and try and get them killed, and then hopefully keep the Blood Tithe down until 2 or 3 of them are dead, so when another one comes in, there aren't back up to 3 again. So that should be cool. Scarbrand does have a 3 dice charge, so you can see I'm deployed far back after learning my lesson against the Mortarchs. And in the Celestial Realm, I've got the Prosecutors and the Knight Venator. He's getting ready to drop down wherever I want to start shooting. I don't want him on the table yet, because the Long Strikes aren't in position to shoot immediately because they're holding an objective. So what the Long Strikes are going to do is try to teleport, and if they succeed and land in a good spot to start shooting one of the monsters, I'm also going to bring down the Knight Venator near them as well, so they can all shoot together at the same monster. So he's hiding up there until then, because there are some potentially very long charges. There are the manifestations that Khorne can conjure up. Very cool, bleeding from the eyes. Apparently this is the worst one though. The axe one, that does some damage, and the other one is anti-command point. I think if you try and use a command point, then it can be cancelled, the effect, but you still spend the point if you do it near this. So, I go first, and I pick Do Not Waver. So, 2 units fight, and none of my units are destroyed. Which you might think is optimistic, but I'm planning to send Prosecutors into Fleshhounds. So, there's part 1 of that completed. The other part is... Hold on. What did I do here? Nope, that's wrong. I didn't pick Do Not Waver. I picked Take Their Land. It's just the 1 is resting between the 2 perfectly. So, Take Their Land, and I pick this piece of terrain here, which is why Krondys has moved up to tag it. And the Prosecutors are charged into the Fleshhounds to keep the Fleshhounds back, so that they couldn't redeploy onto this. Or if they did redeploy onto this, I'd still be able to charge them and kill enough of them so Krondys would be able to control this on his own. So I've taken that piece of terrain and stayed at a safe distance from the enemy. I've put a purple sun there, just to minimise how much pain is going to be coming this way towards me. They're not going to be able to stop, for example, here 3 inches away, which would be an optimal landing position for one of these Bloodthirsters to try and get around here. It's actually going to be more like there. And it's quite a big space between them as well, so that if you do charge the Purple Sun, it's unlikely that you'll pile in enough range to actually fight these guys as well. But you're in a sweet spot for me to countercharge you if you do charge the Purple Sun. The Long Strikes fail to teleport this turn, because it is on a 3-up. So any armies out there that just choose to teleport whenever they feel like it, I'm very envious of them, because Long Strikes do not have that power. The Concussors over on this side are not too eager to go forward, because Scarbrand is there. Now, if I teleported the Long Strikes successfully, the Concussors were actually going to move forward towards Scarbrand, because I was going to put everything into him. Long strikes were going to land over here. Concussors were going to go and try and charge him. I was going to drop down the Knight Venator over here as well and shoot him and try and just completely whomp him in one go. Loads of shooting and try and kill him. However, because they failed their teleport, I decided I'm going to stay right back away from him. Because 3d6 charge is very scary. Also, the more damage he's taken, the more damage he does to you in combat. So ideally, I would just like to shoot him to death, if I get the chance. I do score 8 because I'm holding my objectives, and I have a battle tactic. Onto the forces of Khorne. Seize the centre. So, who's going to try to seize the centre? This fight in the corner is going to continue on between the Prosecutors and the Fleshhounds. We've got one Bloodthirster. This is the one that shuts down ward saves. He's going to try and charge into Krondys and dish out some pain, which would be scary. And the other Bloodthirster and this guy get onto the centre of the battlefield. It's this whole unit there. So they seize the centre, and Skarbrand moves up as well. I'm far enough away from him so that he's not trying a long charge, which is good. And this Bloodthirster, insensate rage, makes it into Krondys. The long strikes do some nice counter shooting though. They redeploy first of all and then counter shoot. And this armour looks very nice from this angle. They do some wounds, so I think he's got 7 left, this Bloodthirster. So he's heavily wounded from that counter shooting, and he is actually less powerful because of that now. So actually that's wounds taken. So I count the wounds remaining, my opponent is counting wounds taken. I do remember that now actually. So as long as I tell you that each time I show the wound dice, then it's okay. So he's taken 11 wounds now. So in the combat, Krondys hasn't taken that many wounds actually. Did I show a picture of Krondys' wounds? Because I all-out defensed him. He didn't take that many. And then I did a load of wounds to him. So Krondys is winning this duel, which is really good. Out in the corner, this fight goes on, and the longer this lasts, the better it is for me, because if one of these units dies, they raise the blood tithe by 1. So if they just keep hitting each other with pillows for the entire game, the Prosecutors and the Fleshhounds, just delaying the blood tithe as long as possible, that works for me. So, this is a very scary situation here. One of the Bloodthirsters and Skarbrand. So, if I don't get the next turn, these two, potentially, one of them could go over there and maybe help fight Krondys. Skarbrand could get to the Concussors, perhaps, and he does loads of wounds. Then it could go bad. Both of them could go for the Concussors and just wipe them out. So I want to get the next turn, desperately, because we're level at the moment. And I do get the next turn, which is good. And if you went first in the previous round, odds are you are going to have the choice of going first in the next round as well, because you break ties. And I go for, look at my stylish sunglasses that are capturing reflections of the room there. And there I am taking the picture in my sunglasses. And there's my t-shirt. And is that my opponent there? Could well be. So they are very stylish orange sunglasses, I think you'll agree though. If I go for Do Not Waver, 2 units fight, none of them die. I think I can guarantee that this turn, and you'll see why in a minute. I have to be careful, so I end up all out defensing the Prosecutors though, to make sure they don't die, to not let down that end of the bargain. I can't move away because I've only got 3 wounds left in the unit, and if you retreat from combat you take D3 mortal wounds. So, could be too risky, so they have to stay in combat. Krondys murders the Bloodthirster that he was fighting, and is down to 11 wounds, which I mentioned earlier is the sweet spot, because it means people have been fighting him, they've been putting effort into hurting Krondys, but he's still at full power until he takes 1 more wound. I did Finest Hour him as well this turn to make sure he finished off the Bloodthirster. And the Concussors move towards Skarbrand. But Skarbrand is a wimp apparently, because he redeployed away from me. So I decided I was going to take the opportunity instead to send the Concussors into this Bloodthirster along with the Purple Sun. And they have put 15 wounds on him, so he's almost dead. But he's still hanging in there. You can see I dropped down the Knight Venator as well. Once I decided I was going to go all in on this guy, Knight Venator came in, or I decided I was going to go all in on something over here. Potentially could have been Skarbrand, but he ran away, so it was definitely going to be this guy. So shot him with the Star-Fated Arrow, attacked him with the Concussors, and it looks like one of the Concussors died as a result, but heavily wounding the Bloodthirster. So we're part of the way to my goal, which is kill 2 of the Bloodthirsters before the Blood Tithe reaches 8 and another one comes in. because especially if Khorne are using the Blood Tithe for other things, such as moving into combat, which is the thing they can do still. If they're using it for that, then they're just pushing back the time that they can bring a fresh Bloodthirster in. So it's going quite well so far, I think. And it's another 8 in that round. Into the Khorne turn, and my opponent goes for Slay the Entourage, picking the Concussors, thinking that this Bloodthirster's already in there with them. Scarbrand's going to be coming in as well. Probably. So surely that's going to be enough to kill them. The Knight Incanter wounds herself, trying to do a counter spell, I think. Unless she took that damage earlier. But Scarbrand is trying to get into combat now with the Concussors. Krondys has got an axe coming after him, the Khorne manifestation, which is a decent little fighty thing there. Oh, you can see there I rolled a 3 on the cast. So she already miscast earlier, and now she rolled a 3, trying to cast a counter spell. So I think I was probably trying to put some kind of debuff. Or I remember what I was doing. So this was a master plan that I hatched in my mind. So this Bloodthirster was technically the closest thing to the Knight Incanter. So I was trying to cast Lightning Blast, which doesn't have a range, it just targets the closest visible enemy unit, and it does D3 mortal wounds. And he only had 1 wound left. So I rolled a 3 on the cast, obviously, so it didn't work. So that's why the Bloodthirster is still alive. Because my plan was to kill that guy with Lightning Blast, so that then when Scarbrand comes down to try to get into charge range, he'll be on his own when he goes in. Or maybe I could even think about redeploying away from him to make it a reasonably difficult charge. But as it is, I could also countershoot him, but the thing is, you don't really want to kill or hurt Scarbrand before you want to kill him, because you're just making him more powerful, which is very scary. So, continuing on, Scarbrand and a Bloodthirster in combat with the Concussors. The axe gets into Krondys. So, what's this? Scarbrand doesn't do very well with his attacks. Well, first of all, he had his commands shut down by the Concussors, which is a great ability that they have. And it's very powerful on something like a big monster that's usually hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. Because if they get to 2s and 2s, suddenly it's a lot more painful. But as it was, he managed to fail with some of his attacks and only killed 1. So I was then able to punch the other Bloodthirster in the face and kill it, which is great. And Krondys killed off the axe as well. And the Prosecutors finally beat the Fleshhounds. You can see the objectives have moved inwards now as well. However, that does mean that we're getting close to another Bloodthirster arriving on the table, which would be bad, but Scarbrand is out on his own in combat. He's not taken any wounds yet, because I haven't attacked him, so he's not at his full power. He's much more powerful after he's taken a load of wounds. So I've killed the other Bloodthirsters first, so if another one comes in, I think we're equipped to deal with it, because I haven't used my resurrection ability yet, either. So as soon as the Concussors die, 2 more of them can come back. So you can see all the little cruddy units I've left mostly alone, because I don't want to build up the Blood Tithe too fast. So only 4 points for Khorne that round, because they did not slay the Entourage, which was this unit. So, maybe, in this situation, would it have been better to attack with the other Bloodthirster first, even though it only had 1 wound left, so it would have been weaker? You would have got the wounds in. The 2 Concussors are not going to kill Scarbrand in 1 round, and if they do good damage to him, they in fact just make him more powerful. So, and that means they're not hitting the Bloodthirster either, which is then free to live and fight again next turn. So maybe that could have been something to consider, going first with the Bloodthirster perhaps. I don't know what the diminished profile of a Bloodthirster is. So, my opponent takes the next turn, and there's going to be no battle tactic, but the way he's looking at it is, if he doesn't take the turn, the long strikes will teleport, I'll just blast Scarbrand into a million pieces, Krondys will probably come over and shoot him as well, and I think there's a high chance Scarbrand would die and it would be game over. So because my opponent chooses to go next, no battle tactic, but he will be able to maybe bring another Bloodthirster in. Krondys rallies and picks up a couple of wounds, which is good. And these warriors here are making their way towards the Knight Venator, trying to take this objective off me. Scarbrand continues to fight the Concussors, but to not much effect again, it seems. All out defensing them. Scarbrand takes some wounds, and the Concussors are still alive. So Scarbrand just has a second really horrifically bad round of combat, which is great. And 4 points for Khorne, so it's looking very good for Stormcast at the moment. Scarbrand is wounded. The other Bloodthirster hasn't come on yet, so I don't think the Blood Tithe was quite high enough, but it will be very shortly. So on to my turn 3, I go for Take the Flanks, which is easy to set up because I had one Prosecutor just waiting in the corner for that very purpose. And the Long Strikes can teleport over here, and the Night Venator can move over here. The reason both of them are there is because there were some hounds here. So if they were to then charge into me and kill me, then I wouldn't be within 6 inches of the table edge. So I wanted 2 units there just as backup, and then I shot the hounds to pieces anyway. Scarbrand does actually kill the Concussor, and it looks like... Hold on, I think the wound dice had fallen over onto the wrong side on the previous shot, because he hadn't taken that much damage yet. I think he's taken 5 here, so he's not actually dead. These guys try and jump on this objective. How many were in that unit? Because I feel like... Oh no, it's Krondys that went to them. So Krondys, did he redeploy or was it a counter charge onto them? Because where did he start this turn? Let's go back a second. Yeah, so it's my turn. So I went up there and didn't... Okay, I remember now. The reason he's not in combat slaughtering them all is because I didn't want to raise the Blood Tithe. I just towed onto the objective and then shot them so I could take the objective off them. That's what I was doing. I was confused why 3 of them were still alive when Krondys was around, but I remember now. You can see he's rallied back some wounds as well. So killed the hounds mostly, but left on 1 wound, which is perfect because it doesn't raise the Blood Tithe. I've put the Purple Sun onto this objective as well, just in case anyone comes over here. And another good scoring turn. 10 this time, because I'm scoring big objectives. I've got this one, and still this one, I think, as well. So I get the first crack at the next round as well, and I choose to take it because I think I can kill Scarbrand this turn. Because he's already taken wounds, and the Purple Sun can go after them, potentially. Krondys can come over here and go for Scarbrand. I can bring back 2 Concussors here. I can teleport the Long Strikes down here. The Night Venator can shoot him. I just converge everything on Scarbrand, so I don't care about battle tactics, just murder Scarbrand. So, here we go. Operation Kill Scarbrand is in effect. You can see the objectives moved into the centre now. So, Krondys moved up as far as he could. Scarbrand actually, I think he might have redeployed towards Krondys and thus onto the objective. So Krondys charged him, but then couldn't pile onto the objective because Scarbrand was in the way. So it's a good move by Scarbrand there. He was caught between a rock and a hard place because whichever way he redeploys, he was either going to take the Concussors or Krondys out of shooting range, but not the Long Strikes or the Night Venator. So they were able to shoot him up, and then Krondys was able to finish him off in combat. And yeah, let's look at where he was. So there he was, the objective landed here, he redeployed over here, but then got eaten. So, successful turn, and then into Chaos turn. Hold on, how many did I score there? So I didn't score much, because I couldn't take a battle tactic, and I wasn't on the one objective that is actually in the game, but I did kill Scarbrand, and now we've got a fresh Bloodthirster. Woo! So, another Bloodthirster has entered the battle with the Blood Tithe that had finally been built up enough to bring one in. But he's not looking in a very favourable position, surrounded by all these units. So, what was the battle tactic? Offering of Carnage. If 2 or more enemy units are destroyed this turn, so the Bloodthirster needs to do some work. And he fails his charge anyway. Bloodthirster drops in, but fails his charge. But the axe does kill a Concussor, but that's not going to be enough for a battle tactic. So, very sad. No points for Chaos in round 4. You can also see that Krondys redeployed just to tow onto this objective as well. And that was because this guy appeared on it. This guy ran in, I think this is the priest, left his skull tower and jumped onto the objective, so Krondys redeployed just to tow onto it. So that worked out nicely. And then, in round 5, The axe is working its way down. Bloodthirster and Krondys are going to get into a battle. There we go, look at that. Beautiful image. I thought about using one of these shots in the thumbnail, but I thought, you know what, I had Krondys in central and in one of the previous thumbnails, so don't want to make the videos look identical. So they're going to go at it, dueling away. And yeah, there's not going to be too much to fight for the rest of the game because the Bloodthirster is not taking the objective off me. So no points scored there for Khorne either. And then in my turn, I'm able to teleport the long strikes over here, blast away at the Bloodthirster, kill another Bloodthirster, and Krondys is still on the objective. And I'm in the corners, so I've got Reclaim the Realms, and 10 points for the turn. So a nice, big, juicy, succulent, tender, moist win for the Stormcast Eternals, 38-16. So, it was kind of a dream matchup for me, this one, because when I was thinking about what my list would excel against, it's big hero monsters that aren't screened, and the fact that you kind of have to spread out your army at the start of the game in this battle plan means that you can't screen everything with the amount of, or the lack of screening that was available to the Khorne player. So we've got Visibly Riley in the chat. Good evening. 36-16 is a real score. Yes, it sure is. So Bloodthirsters are a good target for my army. And if it was a battle plan where they could all be bunched up and screened out by the Fleshhounds, so I couldn't get to the juicy stuff, and then they could focus their attacks, then I would have been more concerned, but because they were spread out at the start of the game. So what would you do if you were in the Khorne player's situation here? Would you group all your Bloodthirsters together and surround them with the chaff units and just advance slowly towards the enemy? And don't worry too much about scoring in the first turn, just let yourself be the underdog. Don't bother scoring the corner objectives and just stay all together as one group and then move forward in towards the centre. Because if you're really contesting this big square here, then most of the turns of the game you're going to be able to score something. So I think screening the Bloodthirsters out was more important. As it was, they ended up kind of off fighting on their own and getting whooped. That's just the reality of the situation from the Bloodthirsters' point of view. They charged in, they didn't do that well in combat, and they got massacred. When you've got support like long strikes, when they're shooting a Bloodthirster, it's -3 rend. So that's very scary. It's the kind of list my list was built to deal with, and it did the job successfully. So I took pictures of the armies at lunchtime on day 2, so we can enjoy those now. There's Trug and the Loon Shrine. There's my army. Not a lot of models, and can you imagine if I was running a Stardrake as well? What else could I fit in there? I have actually been playing around with lists that are Stardrake, Krondys, and 4 Concussors all together, which doesn't leave you many points for anything else. And also, if you take the 2 big dragons, would you really be able to also afford multiple Praetor units as well to be their bodyguard? Because they're not going to be able to keep up with both of them, surely. If they're both going out across the table, then you can't auto-run both units of Praetors. So you're really going to struggle, I think, to fit 2 big dragons in, unless you have some other way of protecting them. So, for example, Krondys can have the Praetors, and maybe the Stardrake, maybe you can put the Mirror Shield on the Stardrake, which would stop it getting shot. Potentially, can you put Mirror Shield on Stardrake now? I don't know if I've tried yet. I don't see why you wouldn't be allowed to. You used to be able to do that. So that could be an option, because you would need something to keep them alive. And then what else could you afford with the Concussors in there? Because you're using over 1,500 points on 3 units there. So what else would you want? You could technically also put reinforced long strikes in there, and that's pretty much your army then. But you're not going to be scoring a lot of battle tactics then. So you probably want something like a priest to teleport. Maybe you want a unit of prosecutors for some speed. So I'm going to mess around with lists anyway. We shall see. So there's Krondys in all his glory. We've got some more Trogs with another Trug. And pals. Pink trolls there. We've got some Nighthaunt with a lot of ghosts. A lot of ghosts there. We have got some Slaanesh. Very attractive snow basing for Slaanesh there. very statuesque miniatures. We have got some Sylvaneth with the Beetle of Doom and some nice Kurnoths. We've got some other Stormcast, so this is nice to see that someone's managed to paint this many prosecutors already, the new prosecutors, who are teamed up with, let's see, we've got Vanquishers, we've got at least 2 units of Long Strikes there. We've got some Paladors, we've got, I assume that's the Lord Relictor with a different head. We've got the Knight Arcanum. So interesting, it's very different to my list of course. But obviously, Long Strikes, can you really leave home without at least a unit of 6 Long Strikes now? I don't think so. We've got some Filthy Verminous Skaven. And are these the new models, or any of these the new ones? I can't tell just by looking at them. Then we've got some more Stormcast on lovely old school Goblin Green basing. So Stormcast and Goblin Green bases did not overlap in time period. So it's nice to have that little touch of the past in there. There is, I think this is being run as Karazai in this list, if I remember rightly. I'm talking to the player. There's a Chariot, there's Yndrasta. There is the Vexillor, we've got some regular Annihilators, we've got some Prosecutors with wings. As you can see, they're the old Prosecutors. I like the colour scheme of this army. There are some Liberators, some Vanquishers, and some Gryph-hounds, so another very different list. I do have Yndrasta, so she'll be getting a run out at some point as well. The Annihilators I'm not too sold on at the moment though. I think other units have got a massive boost and the Annihilators are being left behind a little bit. Annihilators are really hurt by the changes to the redeploy mechanic. Because it used to be they drop in after redeploys. But I kind of hope that that doesn't change. I don't want them to start messing with the sequencing of the turns, because I like the way it works now, which is you do all your stuff and then say to your opponent, would you like to do a redeploy or any other movement actions that you're allowed to do on my turn? And then they say, why, yes I would, I'll redeploy this unit. And then in the shooting phase, you do all your shooting and then say to your opponent, would you like to counter covering fire me? And your opponent says, yes I would, here's the unit I'm going to shoot you with. And if you then had another ability that was, this unit may shoot after the enemy have done covering fire, or this unit may move 3 inches after the enemy has redeployed, it just gets too messy, I think. So I hope they do not break that rule. I can see it happening, but I really hope they don't, because I really like how smooth the flow of the game is now. I hope nobody breaks that core flow. Nice Chariot there. I do have the Chariot. I'm not that sold on its rules in this edition yet. But it's Stormcast, so the book's going to be coming soon. And what's this? More Stormcast. So, I'm going to guess this is Stormcast, because they're all birds. So is it just Tzeentch, or is it Stormcast Eternals? I don't know. It looks like Stormcast, which would make these 2 Chariots. But I really have no idea if it's actually just a Tzeentch army, because they're all birds. The birdie cast Eternals. If the player of this army ever watches this video, or if anyone who was at the tournament played against this and knows exactly what they are, then let me know. Because it looks just like Stormcast with bird heads, so it must be Stormcast, surely. Then we've got some Sons of Behemat with what appears to be a very tasty looking Endless Spell there. I guess. Yeah, there's another giant there. So very tasty. Always a fan of seeing Talos from Jason and the Argonauts. I've got one of those as well. It's a different one. Mine's an action figure. And on to the next round. So, oh yeah, I'll tell you who won Best Painted actually while I'm at it. I believe it was the Sylvaneth here. I think they won Best Painted. Is it purely the paintwork, or do the nice, vibrant tufts help as well? Some people are big fans of tufts. This army, obviously, untufted. So, moving on to the final round. And it is the better part of Valor. So, it's pretty standard mission, this one. There's nothing too crazy about it. The only thing that changes, really, and I'll explain why it isn't that big of a deal in the game in a minute, is that each time an enemy unit contesting an objective is destroyed by a fight ability used by a friendly non-hero unit contesting the same objective, that friendly unit gains the dominant keyword and it gains 10 to its control score. So, Why is that not a big deal? First of all, there are lots of big hero units, big hero monsters, so they can't gain that. And they're the kind of thing that are often clearing objectives. I'm not encountering a lot of situations where two non-hero units are duking it out over an objective at the moment. It's just not coming up that much. And the units that are clearing objectives aren't generally the kind that then want to stick around on objectives. So they want to be off fighting something else. Especially when there's 6 objectives to fight for. So I don't think this is a very good mission in the current meta, perhaps. Maybe some armies notice that there's play that they can do on this mission that actually makes sense. But I don't think this really comes up too much. Add 1 to hit rolls made by units in the underdog's army that attack a dominant unit. So in fact, you actually have a bit of a downside as well to it. So I don't think that's particularly impactful. So it's just 6 objectives, basically, and you want to score more than your opponent. And I'm against Nighthaunt, and look at that. It's a wall of wailing ghostly death. So let's pull up this list now. Round 5. And the Nighthaunt. So, Nighthaunt were being touted before the event as being broken. But obviously they're not dominating the leaderboard at this event, so people must be crushing them at times. It's Deathstalkers, 3 drops. Lore of the Underworlds and Morbid Conjuration. And let's see what's in there. We've got Lady Olinda, who is the general. There are some Dreadblade Harrows, and I'm going to forget what most of these units are possibly as well. Oh, in fact, the Dreadblade Harrows actually might be the cavalry, where it's just 2 of them with swords. I think that's what that unit is. Then in the next regiment, there is Reikenor the Grimhailer, which is this one on the horse, I think. 1 unit of Bladegeist Revenants. And 2 units of Hex Wraiths, which are converted Hex Wraiths to make them more ghostly. Because we were discussing actually that the Hex Wraiths don't look like a Nighthaunt unit. Because they're not. They're just an old Vampire Counts unit that kind of look ghostly. But they don't look as ghostly as the Nighthaunt, so I approve of this conversion, even though the Hex Wraiths do look cool. They just don't necessarily fit with the ghost theme. Nighthaunt, they must be very quick to paint, but there are a billion of them. So maybe that balances out. There is, in the next regiment, Guardian of Souls. And is that something around here? Is it this dude, maybe? And in that regiment, there is a reinforced unit of Bladegeist Revenants and a unit of Grimghast Reapers, also reinforced, and then Spirit Hosts who are surrounding him. So, we've got some really big, scary units of ghosts that on paper don't necessarily look that good, but they can become good because they dish out lots of debuffs to you as well. When they attack you, when they charge you, they have a lot of weird stuff they can do to you, a lot of -1 to this and that, and they can countercharge you while they're already in combat and all kinds of crazy stuff. They don't really abide by the core rules. There should be a meme out there of a Nighthaunt ghost just putting the Age of Sigmar rulebook into a shredder, because they disobey most of the rules. You can't lock them down, they charge while in combat, and they have an armor save you can't reduce. I actually think the Nighthaunt are designed wrong. I'm not going to say badly, but I think it's wrong how they've approached creating a ghost army in the first place. Because an untouchable save already exists. That's just a ward save. So giving them an armor save you can't reduce, I think, is needlessly confusing in the rule set. I think it would be better off to just give them all a 4+ ward and make that their only save. And maybe you can have buffs to give someone a 3+ ward for a turn or something. That would be pretty wild. And I think the ethereal, they don't really feel ethereal, because you can always just hit them and they might die still. It feels like they should be just kind of shifting in and out of the material plane. And whether you'd represent that in some way, like they can switch on and off being ethereal or being in the material plane or not. So if they're obviously ethereal, they wouldn't be able to do anything, they wouldn't be able to charge or contest objectives or fight you, but obviously you couldn't fight them either. I'm sure lots of playtesting would have to go into it, because off the top of my head, the first thing I could think of, if you could make your whole army ethereal, would be they could just box you into a corner so you have no way you can move and you can't attack the units. They could just trap you there, which would obviously be stupid. So something along those lines. But the way it is at the moment, they don't feel that ghostly. The one thing that does feel ghostly is that you can't tie them down with movement. But then you have the weird, they can still charge you while they're in combat thing, which seems a bit odd. Okay, so that's enough complaining about the design of one of the factions, and in the skies we have Prosecutors, the Knight Venator, and the Longstrikes. Because I don't want to be shooting at these crummy ghosts, I want to be shooting at the heroes, but I can't shoot them yet because they're hiding, so I'll wait till they've spread out a bit, hopefully. We'll see if I can resist the temptation. So turn 1. Oh yeah, we've got units that can teleport in my turn as well. And a couple of them teleport straight onto the objective. So, the way I'm going to play this game, I don't have that many units. I can't cover the whole table, there's 6 objectives. I can't really play the objective game against Nighthorn here, because whichever objectives I leave alone, they teleport onto. And if I sit on all the objectives, I don't have enough units to fight. So, I'm going to do my best, but I'm just going to try and kill stuff. I'm not going to be too bothered about the objectives, just try and kill everything, and then see where the scores are. Maybe that's the wrong approach. So Krondys and the Praetors are making their way up this side. And if we go back to the wide shot, actually. So, I'm going to ignore this area here. I'm going to just push that side and that side, slam in, and try and kill the ghosts. And then, hopefully, the ones I kill will have to be replaced with something. So the units will spread out that way and that way to fight me. And something will be left in the middle. That's the plan. And then, when the juicy stuff is in the middle and all the chaff has moved out either way, that's when I can start trying to attack the juicy core. We'll see if that actually works at all. So the first thing I'm going to do, because the enemy can move in my turn and still charge, I think everything... Does everything have run and charge in this list? Feels like it does. So the Longstrikes and the Knight Venator have dropped down here, and I'm just going to start blasting off Hex Wraiths now. There we go. So I'm trying to kill as much of the cavalry and stuff that could be countercharging me as possible. Bad Squiddo Games in the chat. Wahoo. I'm not quite sure what you're celebrating there other than just arriving. And we'll decide whether that's cause for a celebration or not. The Concussors charge in and take out another unit of Hex Wraiths. So, before the game, I was under the impression Hex Wraiths were good, so I'm shooting them up. And killing them in combat as well. Krondys doesn't make his charge though. So, I'm just holding him there for the time being, because what I'm thinking is, if we look at this side, anyone that wants to go and attack the Longstrikes now, Krondys could maybe countercharge them. So, part 1 of the plan is going off okay. You can see we've already created a little bit of a gap. So, if the Longstrikes aren't in combat, they can always teleport out of it, and maybe teleport over here somewhere, and then start shooting the heroes. So that is the plan anyway. We'll see, because some of them will be able to hide from being near all this infantry. But it's kind of working a little bit already, you can see. You can see what I was going for at the very least. If I score 8 points, obviously I don't hold this objective because I've abandoned them to go forwards and fight. But I've decided that instead of waiting for the enemy to split up, because they don't really have to, they could just bide their time and teleport around with these units to where they need to be for scoring. For example, take their land, they can just bounce onto a piece of terrain I'm not next to. And I might struggle with similar tactics because they can teleport on my turn to stop me scoring, for example, as well. So they could have a nice tight little bundle of ghosts here on all 3 objectives and just stay like that for most of the game. So I want to break that early. So that's my plan. Let me know if you've got a better one. Bad Squiddo Games. Love me some AoS battle reports by Andy2D6. I should hope so. I hope you're a hefty backer on the Patreon as well. Bad Squiddo Games. And not just here to promote your own wares. Although, to be fair, I will be using some Bad Squiddo Games products at some point soon in the old world. So people can look forward to that. So, death battle tactics. Take their land. very easy because there's just units that teleport without having to roll a dice. Unlike the long strikes that have to roll a 3+ to teleport, the Nighthaunt units just do what they want. So we've got loads of ghosts fighting the concussors. We've got Lady Alinda casting spells and putting buffs on the units. And I throw out a counter spell of a purple sun to block the path to the long strikes. So hopefully it's a bit more difficult to reach them now. And also, crucially, a bit more difficult without bringing Krondys into the equation. That's my plan. So you can see, however, there is a gap big enough for this unit of ghosts to get in there without setting them off. And at this point, I think I've had to use up my command points, so Krondys countercharging isn't an option anymore. Because what I was thinking was, actually, that if I don't do a purple sun, if I just hold the command points and try and countercharge with Krondys, my opponent can charge one of these ghostly units into him and just tie him up there anyway. So I thought, why not throw out a purple sun and limit how many units can reach my soft underbelly. The concussors are getting surrounded by ghosts because they can retreat and charge as well, all of the Nighthaunt, and these are things that are kind of thematic and make sense. A ghost should be able to run away and still come back and attack you because it's a ghost. What are you going to do? Grab it by the shirt. You're not going to keep it there. So that bit makes sense. I just think the whole design of the army is wrong. I complained a lot about Khorne in the last edition, actually, in a similar way, in that it was designed, it worked, it functioned, it was just weird the way it worked, and I thought it should have been done differently. So that's how I feel about Nighthaunt. I think they should have been done quite differently. But then again, I'm not one of the GW game designers or playtesters, so I have no say in the matter. So, concussors heavily surrounded, but it's kind of working for the plan because we've spread out the two sides of the opposing army into two vast forces on each side now. So that bit's kind of worked. So a load of ghosts into the long strikes there. The other ones around the back actually fail their charge. I think those are Hex Wraiths. Purple Sun is embroiled in the combat as well, and takes some wounds. One long strike is still alive, which is... I'm not sure if it's good or bad, because the concussors are going to die as well, so it's not like I'm going to be bringing back long strikes. But you can't really pin down the ghosts either, so it doesn't make too much difference just being alive. All the concussors get killed, they just get swallowed up by this ghostly wall. And whenever you get charged by the Nighthaunt, you get a various debuffs put on you, including Strike Last. And I think Strike... Is that one of the debuffs they put on you, or is that something else that causes Strike Last? Because I feel like they just point at you and say, I choose you to strike last, like a Pokemon. So, big scores for the Nighthaunt, because I can't keep them off the objectives because they just bounce where they want to be. Into round 2. And on my turn 2, I choose attack on 2 fronts. So, take 2 objectives off the opponent. However, I then realise that this is an auto-fail objective, because the Knight Incantor, I don't believe she can auto-run onto this one. Or maybe she could have done. But if she did, she's not enough to take it on her own. But I don't think she could. I think I probably measured and determined she couldn't. Or maybe just the way I went about the tactic was auto-fail. Because I can take this one quite easily with Krondys. So there's one, but I have to take 2. So I also want this one. There's 2 dudes on it. For me to take it, I have to charge them. And they can teleport anywhere they want. So whenever I land near them, they just teleport away and I can't charge anymore. So it's pretty much auto-fail the way I went about it. So Knight Incantor was going to try and charge them. And they teleported over here instead. So Krondys, you can see that he did actually steam in, killed a load of ghosts, and then powered through to finish them off with mortal damage, and then get back to the Praetor bodyguard. So I think that was cool. The Purple Sun is still up there, and again, the Knight Venator is stuck in the middle of combat, and no one's attacking him. People really underestimate this guy. He costs 190 points, and people just don't want to hurt him for some reason. He's so little of a threat once he's already fired his star-fated arrow, or if you don't have any monsters, just at any point in the game, because he's not that scary if you don't have a monster. However, he has done some decent damage in this event, especially against Bloodthirsters. He did a good job in that game, and he has scored me some battle tactics. So I think he is actually a decent addition, because you need something skirting around the edges of the table to score tactics, and he can actually contribute to the game while out there in the flanks as well, because he can shoot 24 inches. And then he does have that very powerful one shot into a monster at some point as well. So I think he's decent, actually. He's a bit expensive, and I don't think he needs to be that expensive because you can't spam them, because you can only use the Star-Fated Arrow once per army, not per model. So you wouldn't be able to spam him anyway, so I think he could come down in points. But then, again, he probably is getting deleted in a year's time anyway, so I'm sure they won't bother balancing him. So I only score 4 points that round, because I failed the battle tactic. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I measured and found out that I was just out of auto-run range to get into that objective. Because she's not enough to take it on her own. And did I have another unit that could have helped? I think the prosecutors, possibly. But because I remembered they could teleport, I just didn't bother bringing them in there. Saving them, I think. Onto Nighthaunt. And the Nighthaunt go for seize the centre, which is going to be easy, because there's not much in there. And you can see that the two dudes teleport off the objective, and then this guy lands on it instead, just to stop me redeploying the Night Incanter onto it. And loads of units are in there. There's actually, there they are, the unit that teleported and this unit here are within 3 of the centre and out of range of me countercharging. And we did have to check the charge rules as well, because I reminded my opponent as he was putting the purple sun there, are you sure you want to be just over 12 inches away? Because if you're within 12.5, then I can still declare a charge and then decide if there's a legal spot for me to land in afterwards, so be careful. And then we checked, and that is the case in this edition. Previously, you would have to have a unit within 12 inches to declare the charge, whereas now you just declare the charge, roll the dice, it doesn't matter who you're going to be charging, and then you check to see if there's a valid place for your charge to land somewhere, and then if there is, you can make the move. So, Purple Sun and the Long Strike and the Night Venator still alive in this corner. You can see the returning concussors, 2 of them there. When they popped in, they failed their charge into the ghosts earlier. So the Hex Wraiths steam into my hero and Long Strike, and he's dead. And the Venator has taken some wounds. Purple Sun is still doing okay. The Purple Sun in combat has been quite disappointing, and against Nighthaunt he doesn't do that much because his -1 armor buff does nothing to them because their armor save can't be touched. So it's not looking great for the forces of the Stormcast. There's still a lot of ghosts left, although I have killed that one massive unit of them, but they can come back. And in fact, I think they may have already come back over there at half strength. So Nighthaunt firmly in the lead, but who's going to get first crack at the next round? It's me, so I'm going to go for Do Not Waver. 2 friendly units fight, and none were destroyed. So the concussors go into the Hex Wraiths. They shouldn't die as a result of that. They should be okay. Krondys fails a 4-inch charge. And the only reason it's 4-inch charge is because his base is too big. So he has to go slightly round the edge of this terrain to get to within half an inch of the Purple Sun. And he rolls a 3. And I already used my reroll to get the concussors on a 6-inch charge. Wow, wow, wow. So 1 unit is going to fight because the Purple Sun doesn't count as a unit. And yep, so on that basis, what I had to do is complicated. So 2 units have to fight and no friendly units have to die. 2 very specific things you have to do. If the concussors hit the Hex Wraiths first, the Hex Wraiths would die. At which point I failed the battle tactic because only 1 of my units has fought. So what I had to do, because Krondys failed a 4-inch charge, was fight with the Night Venator first, so I didn't accidentally kill them too early, and then hope that he survives the counter-attack from them, and then the concussors fight. Otherwise it would just be auto-failed. But as you can see, they obviously killed him straight after that. Even though I all-out defensed him, he did not survive. So, failed battle tactic. So, not very nice turn there for the Stormcast, and not much. I do hold an objective or 2. I've got the Night Incanter on this one. You can see the prosecutors came down here thinking about maybe going after this hero, but he actually redeployed away, flew off, so I didn't bother going after him. And because I wanted them as a backup, you see, in case some of these failed their charges, but he redeployed away, so they were no longer really an option there. I think they probably didn't roll high enough to catch him with his redeploy. So not much going on there. Into the Nighthaunt turn, take the flanks, which is going to be very easy. Although you can't set up the units this turn, but you can teleport them there the turn before in advance that you know you're going to do this. So you can see all the debuffs that I've got built up on these ghosts. So they're currently on -1 charge dice and -1 to hit. Some of those spells I do in my own turn, and then I do some of them as counter spells as well. So you can stack up multiple debuffs. Krondys has the no spell put on him, which means that he can't have any boosts to his abilities. So you can't all-out attack, you can't increase your stats by anything, you can't buff yourself up at all. So you can only suffer from negative modifiers, not positive ones, which is a very powerful thing to slap onto a unit. And yeah, what I'm finding so far is that the games where I'm drastically out-magicked by the enemy, I'm getting whooped. And the games where I out-magic the enemy, I whoop them. So I don't know what that tells you about this edition of the game at the moment, that magic is very powerful perhaps, but it seems to have... I don't know if it's necessarily been the deciding factor in the games, but it is just a coincidence. So, Purple Sun and some ghosties. I'm not even going to bother giving them their correct name because they're all just ghosts. And there's two very similar units, and I'm not sure what the difference is between them. So, they're going in. We've got some smaller unit of resurrected ghosts going after the prosecutors. And these two fellas are just moving into the corner a bit so they can score the battle tactic. And time to do some charges, perhaps? Let's find out. The Hex-Wraiths run away, actually. And not much going on. The Purple Sun goes into Krondys. And the other unit doesn't do much. So Strike Last, yeah, so Strike Last is an effect you just place on them by charging. So it's not even a roll either. So Stormcast, I think, yeah, Stormcast got some really powerful abilities on some of the units. You can charge in, and if you take the particular subfaction with certain units, you can put like shutdown commands, and you can get strike first on one of my units, but both of those things require a roll of a 3+. There's not much where you just point at someone and say, this thing happens. The one I can think of that Stormcast has is the Knight Venator with his shot, once per game shot. You don't actually roll to hit with that anymore. It's just, I point at you and you suffer this many mortal wounds. There's still a dice roll attached to it, but it's the only one where it's just automatic, I look at you and the thing happens. Everything else is attached to a dice roll of some kind. So, the ghosts don't want to fight Krondys, which is sad because he would have liked eating them, but he eats the Purple Sun instead. So big scoring for the ghosts, and we can't really do much about it because I don't have the units blocking objectives. And I'm thinking now that the strategy maybe should have been to be more conservative, hang back, just guard my own objectives so the enemy don't build up a lead by teleporting onto the objectives I abandon, make the ghosts come towards me, at which point they would have to spread out, otherwise they'd be abandoning their own objectives, and then I could teleport onto them. And I have the superior shooting, so they would want to come towards me in theory. So maybe I'll have a different approach against the ghosts next time I face them, or maybe it'll be a different ghost list, so maybe it'll be totally different. So into my turn 4, and I go for Slay the Tyrants and try and kill a hero. And Krondys is going after this lad, but he redeploys away. Pushes into these ghosties on an objective, and not much is accomplished. Krondys doesn't make the long charge, and 4 points, just for being on some objectives. Not much there at all. And then Nighthaunt go for Inevitable Demise. 2 or more friendly units wholly within enemy territory and more than 9 inches from enemy units. And none of those units were set up this turn. So if you've been advancing towards the enemy, you can use this battle tactic towards the end of a game, or if you already set up there the previous turn. So there's lots of units embedded in my territory. Even if they're horribly debuffed, they don't worry about that. That's why they didn't charge me in their last turn, by the way, because I put -1 to hit and wound on them, I think, and -1 charge dice. So they just didn't bother, because it would have been a waste of time against Krondys. So They're chasing after Krondys now as the game winds down, and everyone tries to punch him in the face. He's striking last, and he's got -1 on his save, which is just another thing that you just slap on them because you charged them. And -1, something is -1 on them as well. Oh, -1 to hit, there we go. So Concussor's dead, Krondys dead, and more points to the Nighthaunt. Turn 5 for me, the Praetors just hold an objective, and that's it. And then they get killed in the next turn by all this horribleness, which we didn't actually play out the last turn because it was the end of the day and everyone else had finished playing, so we just assumed that everything else would kill the Praetors or at least kick them off the objective. So, that's how that game ended. So I can tell you the final score. Let me just pull that up here, because we were packing up too quick, so I didn't take a picture of the final victory points. So, maximum 50 points to the Nighthaunt, and 22 for the Stormcast Eternals. So obviously that game did not go very well. And like I was describing, I think I could have had a more conservative approach that might have been better, instead of... Obviously I had a strategy in mind, I wasn't just blindly charging into them, I was trying to separate the two halves of the ghosts so I could strike at the centre. But they were very fast, and they hit a lot harder than they look as well. You would think that these ghosts just survive well, which they do, and they did make an awful lot of saves as well. But they also hit hard when they whomp you as well. And they've got decent rend, they debuff you up to the eyeballs, so not an ideal matchup. No big monsters in this list, so nothing that I was really confident I could just strike into and murder like I could with the Bloodthirsters. And to a lesser extent the Trolls in the first game, I thought that was a decent matchup as well. Just a big wall of meat with some big meaty monsters that I can just focus fire into and then destroy their ability to bring them back with the faction terrain. The games that I did not win were where there were bigger screens to protect the stuff I wanted to kill. So Tzeentch had all the Zangors, so I was never able to get near Kairos. I was never able to get near Nagash particularly. And in this game I was never able to get to the heroes either. I was stuck fighting the ghosts. So I should probably have a little bit of a list rethink and listen to some advice from the internet and see what people think would be good choices. I've been looking at Retributors actually. They're only 180 points and they seem to hit quite hard. But is that what I need? Do I need another unit that hits hard? The units I've got already hit hard. Do I need a bit more versatility? What do you think the Stormcast list needs to deal with this kind of thing, where there's just screens of lots and lots of not that amazing, but still tough to shift units, and just chaff screens as well, because they will be an issue. Let me know in the comments. So let's look at the final table to see where I finished actually. Leaderboard. So out of 24 players, 18th. So, not bad. Let's see. The highest placed player that got 2 wins was 11th. Yeah, so that would have been nice. But obviously, some of my losses were large, and I had that one very, very narrow win in Game 1. I did have one big win. My differential difference was -53, which is quite bad. Because there was someone that actually finished... Let's see... Someone finished below me in the table with a differential of 0 according to this. So they must have had a really dominant win and then some narrow losses to finish below me but still get a differential of 0. Let's see, the person who won was +89, which was a Nighthaunt player, but not this one. The player that I played in round 5 here ended up in 11th. Where did the other Nighthaunt player finish? 6th. So they all got into the top half, and the other Stormcast players, one of them finished last. I was 18th, and we've got another one in 14th. And that's it for Stormcast. So in the top 3 it was Nighthaunt, Seraphon, and Disciples of Tzeentch. So I don't feel bad about losing to that Tzeentch army, because that obviously did very well. Won 4 games. Nobody won 5 actually at this event, which is interesting. The top player got 4 wins and a draw. So before I wrap this one up, get any quick comments in there, any questions before we end this stream? And I'll tell you what's coming up on the channel while I'm waiting to see if any more comments drop in. So, the events calendar, let's have a look. Other than there just being a battle report, at least a battle report every week, there is another Age of Sigmar event at the weekend, which is Bootcamp 5. So I'll probably take a different list to that and see how it goes. Then, the weekend after that, there's an Old World tournament. Then there's a gap of 1 week. Then there is Clash of Kings, which is the biggest Kings of War event of the year, which is going to be exciting. And in between all of those, obviously, there's going to be the weekly battle reports, at least. Some weeks coming up, I'm going to have 2 battle reports, actually. I'm arranging some games on my weekly day off work, as well as at the game club. So, plenty of red-hot, steaming, non-stop torrent of action heading your way. Seth says, thank you for these, they are fun. I should certainly hope so. Batsquiddo says, you're more battle report than man. It has been said that I am half battle report, all man. Okay, let's wrap this one up. So, don't forget to check out all the links in the description. Don't forget to subscribe if for some reason you haven't. Don't forget to leave some comments. And check out all the Twitter and Facebook and Discord server and all that stuff down there. And obviously, if you want to keep a non-stop flow of red hot, spicy, tingling, sizzling, dishlicious, succulent, moist, finger-licking good, tender battle report goodness into your YouTube feed every week, then why not pledge your entire life savings on the Patreon? Or if you can't afford your entire life savings, just enough to mildly bankrupt you, and then I can spend it all on dwarves and Stormcast Eternals and tournament tickets. Sounds like a much better use of resources than other people's survival to me, and I'm sure you all agree with me. Okay, thanks for watching, everybody. It's been a nice 2-hour, 7-minute stream. I'll wait for it to tick to exactly 7 minutes and say good night out there, whatever you are.